Thank you for coming today. It's part of an assignment for my master's in herbology, and I've been working on it. So it's been a great help to me. And I want you to have your water because we're at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and 3 o'clock in the afternoon is the time of day where people start to just really come down. If you're not sipping a little bit of water, you're going to get sleepy and unfocused. So the challenge for this next 45 minutes is to very slowly sip that glass of water, and just pay attention to how that makes you feel by the end of the session. Okay, so I'm going to start with my background because many of you know me. Didn't go. Okay. Oh, there we go. Many of you know me because I've been a massage therapist for many years, but a lot of you just don't know the whole history. And you can look at all the people on the screen, all the credentials here, but this is a traditional way of introducing yourself in the world of natural healing, where you don't just list what schools you went to and what degrees you have and how many years you've been at a job, but you list the people who were pivotal in getting you where you are. And so it starts with my family, especially my grandparents, who were tremendously helpful to the entire next generation because they valued education and they pushed their kids to get educated instead of just getting to work as soon as they possibly could to help out the family. So both of my parents are listed here because they went to school. My father's a professional engineer, my mother is a nurse, and they were my first teachers. My sister, Pauline, who many of you know, is a master's in counseling and family therapist. And I followed in her footsteps because we were the first generation of women to get university degrees. But mostly, in terms of education, I started out as a public school student, and I've listed my teachers who had really strong influence on my ability to get into a university and what the university I chose and everything that I learned from that point forward. And so I'm incredibly grateful for them. And at the university, the people listed there, the people who primarily contribute to where I think and how a lot of this came to be. And Gail, Marion, Kay, Cynthia, a lot of the staff at the community college, Elena, Madeline, my clients, my husband, my children, all have contributed to my growth as a healer. And so they are listed here. And currently my master's in herbology is through the School of Natural Healing. So that's where I am and where I came from. And I'm going to start with Elena, because this information is based on my work with Elena Avila, who was a curandera who studied with different curanderos throughout Latin America. As a Mexican-American, she was raised on the border, and I was born on the border. In 1965, the border of New Mexico and the US. And then my family moved around a bit, but since 1972, I've been here at home, what I call home, which is what the Native Americans call the White Shell Water Place. And it's currently known as Santa Fe, New Mexico. And so I am a mestiza descendant of the Spanish conquistadores and the Native Americans who inhabited this land before they arrived. And all of us who live here now are US citizens because of the acquisition of New Mexico and this land by the United States in 1912. And so when I found Elena, she was really she helped me understand that about myself, and that curanderismo was our traditional form of healing that had very much been lost to all of us. And so this is work that I learned from her, and I am by no means a curandera in her tradition. I am much more a massage therapist. and an herbalist and a nutritional healer. My background is more pre-med. I studied a lot of science, math, biology, chemistry, physics. I worked in labs for years. And I have a more Western scientific background. But when I started working with her, I realized that I had unintentionally and unknowingly become a curandera in the tradition of the Mexican-American mestizo people. And I owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to her for helping me to understand that and to guiding me through a lot of healing that I had to do to be able to just be functional. I was a very unhappy person in my junior year in college and decided to leave. And I came home, worked, helped my family, learned massage at that time, and started my journey towards non-traditional healing. And she and Madeline Gale were my primary teachers. And I also learned a lot from the School of Acupuncture, Traditional Chinese Medicine. It was in Santa Fe at the time, which is now closed. So if you want to know more about Elena, this is her basic biography. She was an amazing person. She's passed away. We all miss her. And that's where this information comes from. I spent a lot of time in Ghost Ranch with her. And this is how this particular piece of information is how she always started her sessions. So this formula for balance is a core piece of Aztec heritage teaching through the Meso-American people that still claim them as their ancestors. The tribe she worked with were the Mexicas, and they're a group of people from central Mexico. And this formula, this structure is, it's really how they structured all of their systems, including their pyramids, their social systems, their schools, their families, their communal sense of living. And so it was very much a mathematical formula based on a group of people who were mathematicians. And it's amazing when you start using it, how well it applies to all kinds of things. And you can figure out where your excesses are and your deficiencies are if you start to think in this way. The one thing that you'll look here is the 51% is the what they call the indispensable, which means without it, the system does not exist. It falls apart, it disperses. The 26% is what they call the necessary or lo necesario, which is with the indispensable, what allows a system to keep functioning at its most basic levels. When you go up to the desirable, the deseable, it's 13% of the whole. And it's what most people think of as the point of the system, the most joyful part that they want out of the system. And then the excellent should be in the smallest percentage at 9%. And it is what can bring excellence to any system. So my goal today is to have you look at this, first of all, through the concept of wellness, as they actually teach this concept of wellness, and then through foods, how we can apply this to our diets. So when we go into this first slide about the concept of wellness, they identify breath as the indispensable, hydration as the necessary, rest as the desirable, and nutrition or food as the 9%, which is, dovetails with most Western studies about health. You can stay alive for a very long time just by breathing and hydrating. It doesn't give you much quality of life, but people can stay alive like that for a long time. Most of us think of the activities as we call restful, which are sleep, diversion, joyful flow with work, as why we're here. And then nutrition again at the top, what makes the whole piece come together and creates the possibility for excellence. So if you want to, I'm going to go through these quickly, but breath is in their system, the indispensable, and it is what everybody knows keeps us alive. But the one thing I really want to point out here is that it's not, breath is not just limited to oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange through respiration, which we think of in Western terms. They also incorporated the concept of maybe what the Indians would call prana, or Asians would call chi. The idea that the connection to a greater power is what happens with the breath, and it is a component of breath. And without it, we don't exist, that we are in isolation and things will ultimately fall apart. And that when you acknowledge that you are part of the greater flow of life through your breath, and you use your breath to connect to that, they consider that truly the essential component of life. And so I just want to point out, it's not just a biological thing here, it's also a spiritual component of their system. This next slide, and these pieces I'm going to go through quickly again, are ways which you can optimize your breathing and your breath. And you will again be able to find this on our webpage under Help Yourself and Philosophy of Healing. All this information is already up there. But without breathing properly, the rest does truly fall apart. So if you want to think about improving your nutritional balance, it can't really work if you can't breathe. So while you're working on your diet, it's really, really important to think about breathing, that you're getting enough oxygen, especially while you're asleep, that you're getting exercise, that your air is clear and clean, those kinds of things. And hydration being the necessary, the 26%. If you look at most studies, studies vary, but they basically say between 75 and 90% of our composition is water. And every single biochemical process in our body requires hydration. And so don't think of water just as, oh, I guess I should drink more water. Think of it as an essential component for your nutritional components of your life to be able to do what they do. Without water, you can't take any of that nutrition into your bloodstream and actually use it or get rid of your waste products. So the next slide here is really how can you work on hydration? Good quality water, protect your skin, because we have a lot of interchanges in our body where water can enter and exit. And these are things that you should probably think about alongside looking at nutrition. And then rest again, our 13% are desirable. Really, so many of us think of rest just as being sleep. And one of the most, and they didn't think of rest as sleep. They thought of rest as a time for your body and your brain, your whole system to reorganize itself, to incorporate the nutrition that you take in, to get rid of waste products, to put everything away, clean house, put everything away so you have access it when you get moving again, and start working again. And so these are the things that you should think about with rest, that it's not about hours of sleep. Rest is all of these things. Okay, and now we go into nutrition, which I want to make be the focus of this, because that is the assignment, and that's what I told you I'd do today. But realize from the outset that we can live for a really, really long time without proper nutrition. People live all the time that way. And if you have a good constitution, or you had a solid start at the beginning, you can live for 60, 70 years like this without breaking down. So it's really optional to have good nutrition and be alive. But if you want to have excellence, you want to thrive, it's good to focus on it. So when you get to nutrition, this is how they break down foods. This is our most important slide that I want you to really look at today. They say that 50% of the human diet should be grains, nuts, and seeds. And that includes it, and the definition is there on the left. They're part of the plant that can sprout, allowing the plant to reproduce itself. There's a reason that they say this, because the balance of nutrition in a seed has to be very, very specific in order for sprouting to happen. And when that balance exists, it's an excellent balanced source of nutrition for our bodies. And then again, the vegetables, the other parts of the plant that are not the seed, or the 13% the fruit, because the fruit is considered the food around the seed that feeds the seed so it can sprout. It's used up in the process of producing the first leaves of a plant. And then you look at the last one, the 9%, the animal products, milk, meat, fish, eggs, they all get thrown in there. And if you compare this to the standard American diet and the FDA pyramid, really the FDA pyramid has these reversed. And that's what most of us in the United States were raised with. That's what I was raised with. Lots of milk, lots of meat, vegetables were optional. Fruit was mostly just plain sugar, lots of Kool-Aid, that lots of processed foods that were not whole grains or nuts and seeds, but lots and lots of processed foods. And meat, milk, fish, at every single meal, it was considered like wealth to be able to eat that way. And so most of us have had to transition from that standard American system to something that is more healthy, because we realize it's just not working for us. And we can use this particular definition of types of foods to help you look at what you wrote down. Right? What is let's go back here. I want you to take a minute and look at the last meal you ate, everything you jotted down, and try and figure out, how does it fit in with this? I'm gonna mute myself for a second, and I'm really gonna have you stare at those numbers and figure out, put an F next to fruit, a V next to vegetable, a grain or a nut or a seed, use another notation for that. And then an A, an animal product next to pieces that are clearly animal product. Try and take a minute to jot those things about what you ate today, or that last meal that you brought with you to analyze this with. So I'm going to give you 2 full minutes for that. Okay, time to come back. It's an important exercise because number one, we eat complex combinations of food that have a lot of these different things in them. And it's hard to figure out, oh, how many calories would this be in? How many calories would that be in? Is this a vegetable? Is this a grain? Is this a nut? Is it seed? Is it, you really have to like take it apart and then say, oh, am I really, what's my balance? And that's the point of this whole exercise today, to start looking at your food that way, to see what your balance really is, right? And where are you in excess, which is generally in fruits and animal products, and where are you deficient, which is generally in vegetables, grains, nuts, and seeds. Okay, let's see. Okay, next one. So, as part of my training right now, the School of Natural Healing promotes a vegan diet. No meat whatsoever, because they call this a mucusless diet. They believe any animal products contribute to the development of mucus in your bodies, which clogs things up. And the Meso-American philosophy is not the same. It's more mathematical, kind of more down my alley of thinking and training. And really, I think everybody has to find this for themselves. But the reality is, when you have too much fat, too much protein, no fiber, and no water, which is what animal products generally are, they're incredibly difficult to break down and digest and to get the nutrition from them. So what happens to us is, when we have a diet high in animal products, we end up storing it. We end up building it up in our systems. And that's where the mucus portion of this comes from, because mucus is primarily protein, fat, and stuff that we just can't use. Your body's trapping it. So then we end up bloated through the belly, lots of high cholesterol, problems with all kinds of things, these lifestyle diseases that most Americans struggle with. And you'll see that if you start to come down on your amount of animal products in your diet, your digestion improves. It's easier to break food down if you don't have as very many animal products. And if you cut them all out, it's always a challenge to get balanced nutrition. You have to work harder at it. So everybody has to make those decisions for themselves. I'm not here to tell you how to eat, but to help you to pay attention to how you eat. And so both of these diets really do mesh with other studies around food. So I'd like to point out that the Cancer Society, the Diabetes Association, all the major associations that studied the chronic lifestyle diseases in our society have also statistically shown that when people bring their consumption of animal products down to below 10% in their diet, their incidence of these diseases basically statistically fall to zero. There's a great big China study that was done. The Chinese government commissioned this study to see what was causing cancer in their society, and they made all 3 million people go through this huge, inventory of what they ate over the course of a month. And they came up with the exact same numbers. Those who had less than 10% of animal products in their diet statistically had zero chance of getting these lifestyle diseases, cancer, diabetes, vascular diseases, neurological diseases, which surprised even them. So everybody's kind of moving in that direction. It's a multicultural, big understanding of how the human body works and what our numbers look like when we shift our diets. So I'm going to go through the rest of these relatively quickly so we can get to question and answer. Remember that diet is the icing on the cake. All the other things here are what really truly end up contributing to our ability to use our food and get nutrition out of our food. So start with breathing, moving, hydrating. And the other piece that a lot of us need to look at is the dehydrating components of our lifestyle and our diet. Because we live in a society where there's a lot of this. And even just reducing them while you augment the other pieces that help you is going to have a significant effect on your wellness. One thing I think people don't talk about a lot is the salt-potassium balance in our diets. Many Americans crave salt. We have a lot of high blood pressure issues and end up struggling with it. And it's one of the things that we don't understand is that a lot of us crave salt, but what our body's really asking for is potassium. And when our potassium and salt balance is off and our electrolytes are off, we get cramps, we don't feel good, we get lightheaded, we don't have energy, we start to have kidney issues. It's just it's pervasive. It just gets worse and worse over time. And so if you think about, we're going to look at some of the potassium issues. If you have strong salt cravings, you're probably looking at low potassium in your diet. And then the other thing is our channels of elimination need to be clean for any of this to work. And you have to be able to assess, like, how clean is my skin, my lungs, my sinuses, my GI tract? Do I move my bowels after every meal? What is a healthy kidney function? What is healthy liver function? What does that feel like? What does that look like in the body? And there, we could go into those at another time, but those are things that it's helpful to try and assess, because then you can shift your diet to deal with some of these and not end up having to take a bunch of stuff. But really, you want to take that upside down American pyramid and start to very carefully right yourself. Because if you don't do it carefully and slowly, you end up in crisis, which none of us needs in our lives. So wholesome foods versus partisan foods. This is the way that the Christopher system really looks at food. And that is a truly helpful way to assess what's on that list and on your plate. And if you do nothing else to shift your diet, this is one of the best places to start. Instead of doing processed boxed stuff, do the whole food components of those. Instead of cereal in a box, learn how to work with wheat berries. Excellent source of probiotics, nutrition. They're tasty, they go a long way, they're easily accessible. Flax, especially flax. Flax is one of the best foods for the human body. Then you'll see it in the store all ground up in capsules or in oils or whatever. And if you learn to work with the flax seeds, you get so much more out of them. The same with potatoes, corns, and whole fruits and whole vegetables, instead of the ones that are already broken down into pieces for us and boxed and canned and that kind of stuff. And it's easy on your pocketbook if you do this too. It's much cheaper. And so then the other thing that you can do that's super simple, a little more expensive, but an excellent place to start, is to take the foods that you're eating and that are good for you and switch to the best quality you can. If you can't afford organic, at least get a whole food. And if you can't afford fresh, go frozen. If you can't afford frozen, then go freeze dry. If you can't afford freeze dry, canned or bottled. Really do the very best that you can do and invest in good quality vegetables, fruits, plant foods, because they really do make a huge difference in your health and on the planet as well. So one of the cleansing components of the meat resist diet and the Christian program is to do juice cleansing. because it can really jumpstart digestion, clean out your gut, get you moving better, everything working better. It's just like doing maintenance on a car that's been gunked up for a while. Juices can really get a system moving in a way that other foods cannot. I'm not a big advocate of juicing because it pushes things really quickly. And if you have a busy life, you have kids, you have jobs, you have parents to take care of, you're involved in all kinds of things. It's a bigger commitment. The one juice fast that I recommend to people is the raspberry and carrot juice fast, because it really does work for people after times of stress or poor diet. You've been traveling, you've been sick, you've had surgery, you just haven't been good with your diet and trying to get back on track. And so I do actually recommend that to people on a regular basis. But one thing you need to do, especially about juice cleansing and pushing things quickly, is that if you have medication dependent illnesses, you have to be very careful with this. And your best bet is to work with a natural healer and herbalist to do this without getting in trouble. So just a note there. So these slides I'm going to go through pretty quickly. One of the things that I learned from Madeline Goulard, who I worked with for many years, she worked up in Ojo Caliente. She's my primary herbal teacher. She said, get your GI tract moving, assess where your deficiencies are. If you crave sugar, your saliva is probably not working right. And you need ginger. Ginger helps to stimulate your saliva, which breaks down your sugars. If you have any stomach issues, high acid, you name it, apple cider vinegar and honey heals the stomach. Cayenne heals the stomach and all of the tissues of the circulatory system and the stomach lining. If you've had any blood sugar issues, prickly pear, cactus, nopal, and a little bit of raw honey between your meals, cleans out your gut, helps to stabilize your sugar. Ginger and peppermint with your meals stimulates your pancreas and your GI tract to produce all your enzymes. And if you can get your GI tract working, if you can get it breaking your food down and absorbing your nutrition, you are 50% of the way there. It's so important. And so that's why these are here. And we all owe Madeline a debt of gratitude for saving this information and putting it all together for us. And then these are other types of cleansers and balancers that most people can use without any problem and are really healthy for us, work really well. I'm not going to spend time on them. You can ask questions about them if you want. And again, here's another one. These are all supplements that are recommended through the School of Natural Healing, made available. Again, the best quality you can get, the better. But even poor quality is better than none. And going back to our Meso-American pyramid, your green supplements are filling in that necessary component. And a lot of us can take, 10 capsules of alfalfa a couple times a day when we're in a healing process because we're so deficient in greens. It's one of the very, very best cleansers, chelators of medications that have been stuck in our system, exhaust from being in traffic all the time. Spirulina is another one of them, and chlorella. Those two, the other three are sea vegetables and have a lot of protein. But anybody who's had any kind of hormone imbalance, kelp is an excellent green to just add to your food, taste it. And when you start taking too many of them, your urine starts to smell like them. Your feces will be green. They will not taste good to you anymore. That's when you know you've taken too much. They're foods and they talk to us. But that's where, if you want to do supplements to start healing yourself, this green component is the most valuable to most people. And then the healing oils. We don't think about the fact that most foods have oil to them. When we process them, we take out the oil. And these are excellent sources of healing oils that come from seeds and grains and nuts that fill in a lot of the gaps that people have had in that lower layer that are long-standing. Olive oil is super helpful for all kinds of things. That's one of the best oil on the planet. Wheat germ oil can be essential for helping us balance our hormones. Flaxseed is the best for our GI tract and our vascular system. And lecithin is cell repair. It's a really interesting fact that if you don't know about it, it's a good one to read about, especially if you're an athlete, moves a lot, really helps joints. If you have bad skin, it's excellent for skin. And then these other ones, I'm blocked, but again, the one I haven't talked anything about here is a lot of people will be iron deficient. Blackstrap molasses can be an incredibly helpful tool for that, especially if you're taking cayenne with it, you're working on the other pieces. And raw honey, super supportive of the immune system, excellent sugar substitute if you're trying to get back off of straight sugars. And elderberry, and even though it's the last one on there, elderberry is one of the best ways to balance your potassium. If you start adding elderberry to your life in syrups, in tincture, in capsules, and whatever you do, all of a sudden people's water retention resolves. Their cravings for salt goes down, muscle cramps go away, they start to sleep better. We don't think of how important that is, but it's one of the things I really wanted to point out to you today. Okay, so here's our wrap up, the things that that I really want to repeat again. When you begin with this, just start where you are. Okay, to take that assessment that you wrote down and say, where do I need to add more? Where would I be best to cut back? And just choose wisely. Start with the one or two simple things that are within your capacity to do without disrupting your life and taking you away from your obligations and responsibilities and the things that are really important to you. Everybody can start where they are and move to a better place. And do it in small quantities. Test it out. See what it does. Some things you'll taste and you'll just say, never again. Other things will be like, oh my gosh, it's delicious. And then after a week or a month, 6 months, I'm going to say, you don't taste very good anymore. And that's how our body communicates with us. Cravings are our body's way of talking to us about what we need. But we need to understand what those cravings mean, not just fill them with stuff that is temporary. And so, again, decrease animal products, increase plant products, do more whole foods, more organic foods. What else? Greens. Again, greens. And especially more greens. Most of us need more greens. It's that necessary thing that you have to be creative about getting into your diet. I want to point you to the recipe for green smoothie that's on our website because it is it's on our Help Yourself tab. It's one of the very best ways to throw everything in a blender. Get yourself a good blender, invest in a good blender, and throw anything that you think would taste good. Add a little sugar if you need to. Add a little honey or maple syrup. Add a little salt if you need to get yourself to getting more of these healthy foods. And once it's in a smoothie, you can add as much water as you need to make it as swallowable as you can make it, and start getting your greens in that way. And you'll be amazed at what that does for your bowel movements, for your sleep, for your skin. And it's fast. You can prepare it the night before or in the morning. It's one of the best tools that I throw at my clients who are struggling to keep up with their lives. And it's really can be a stress-reducing way of doing this work. Okay, so that is our wrap up.